America, let's really talk about some stuff that we should think about when it comes to prepping and things that are kind of going on nowadays. I purposely have kind of held off on making a video like this for a couple of weeks. I just wanted to see how things pan out. Speaking of things panning out, today's an Americano. We're going to use some Airship Black Bear coffee. This is a part of my monthly coffee subscription from trade.com. They don't sponsor the channel, but if you want to trade, I'm always showing your coffee, so you might as well make this stuff happen. I've already grinded it up. We're gonna do 18 grams of coffee, and then we're gonna pump out 36 grams into some water that I already have standing by. Here's the thing, man. So the term Americano came from when our boys during World War II were overseas. I can't remember if we were in Italy or some other country, but we couldn't handle a regular espresso. We thought it was too strong. So they began to add water to kind of like tamp it down a little bit, and they began to call it an Americano, right? And I kind of like those sometimes, especially if I'm working with a particularly strong coffee. But I tell you that story to say that we have a long partnership with countries overseas. You know, we have a lot of stories and things that have happened and we've developed over time. And the crazy thing is that we are on the brink of a global trade war, which could directly affect your pockets. I am not here to talk about the politics of the tariffs. I'll leave that, guys, up to you in the comments. What I am here to talk about is it is now April 2nd. I wanted to make this at the end of March, and I told myself, I'll just wait. Let's just see if tariffs are enacted, if they're actually going to be executed, because it may just be a waste of a video and I may not need to do that. So that's kind of why I pumped the brakes a little bit. Today, apparently somewhere, I don't know if it's going to be in the White House grounds, if it's going to be somewhere else, we're supposed to have the signing of tariffs that I think are going to impact maybe multiple countries. We shall see. I'm afraid, you know, we have an announcement of 25% tariffs on imported vehicles. That can be your Toyotas of the world. That's going to be your Subarus of the world. That's going to be your Hondas, your Hyundais, all that good stuff. But there's also vehicles that are American made, but a lot of their components are made in Mexico or Canada, or the entire vehicle crosses over to Mexico for some type of, you know, for whatever they're doing for that part of the vehicle. For instance, my truck, all the instructions in my truck, you know how when you open the door jamb of your vehicle, there are usually certain instructions about tire inflation and all the other type of stuff. Americano on deck, looking really, really good. But all my instructions on my vehicle, on the door jamb, on how much you should inflate, all of them are in French, because my vehicle originally had its finishing work done in Canada, and it was originally, the first owner of my vehicle was in Quebec. So we have these long standing, like, would my vehicle be considered made in Canada, or would it be made in the USA? I don't know where it was finished. I'm not sure if they finished it in Canada, because that's where it was sold. I bought it in 2016, so I bought it when it was a late model, when it was just barely 1 year old, and I paid $44,000 for my truck. Now, it was probably a little bit pricey because when I bought it, it was already lifted. It already had the tires, and it already had the wheels, and it had a upgraded exhaust, but I've already since cut that off and replaced it. But the point being, $46,000 or $44,000 for my vehicle. When I bought that thing, it literally had 4,000 miles on it. It had that entire kit on it, a standard bed. I don't think there's any way with these new tariffs that a vehicle similar to mine today will cost anything less than probably $55,000 or $56,000 for the exact same specs. Pause. Early morning here in the DFW Metroplex, but I wanted to do this video before the signing of the tariffs. But I just want to say, I think we're at the time now where if you haven't made your purchases for large vehicles, unless you really, really need it, Don't go running out buying a Subaru. Don't go running out buying a Toyota, etc. It's no longer the time. I will say that I believe that if you haven't made those large scale purchases for that type of stuff, that can be recreational vehicles as well. Most are made in the US, but if they're made anywhere else and imported, you might want to pump your brakes on campers and trailers and all that other stuff, which really, really sucks. Watches that are made overseas, knife steel that is imported, such as Nitro V, or entire knives that are imported from China, from Italy, such as Fox knives. Spyderco gets a lot of stuff done in Taiwan. Which countries are going to be affected? We literally are, we just don't know until it's all done. So I don't think now is the time to do a run on anything. I know in 2008 we had a similar situation where a new administration was coming in. Everybody was nervous about gun buybacks and gun confiscation and low ammos and stuff like that. There was a crazy run on guns in 2008 and a crazy run on 22 long rifle. If you needed rimfire ammo, it was hard to get your hands on because people didn't know what to expect. There's not that same sense of urgency nowadays because tariffs have been getting talked about so much over the first, nearly 3 months of this administration. But I don't want you guys making impulse purchases. I believe it can affect your prep. It can affect the things that you supply, that you're buying, and that you're trying to get ready for. So I think that those are off the table. So what I'm going to be doing, talking about each category, I'm done with any major purchases. Literally, my Mrs. X and I are so proud of ourselves because we made our final payment on her vehicle last month, and we have 5 kids. So we thought to ourselves, if they don't enact the tariffs, maybe we'll go get a new SUV. Maybe we'll take a look at the biggest Toyota that they make because it can fit all of us in there easily. It'd be significantly cheaper than the Lincoln Navigator because we like Lincoln, but we know that they can be expensive. But maybe we have to look at Lincoln. I don't know. I'm not sure what that's going to mean. Another thing that I'm not sure about is this measles thing. I haven't talked to y'all about this in a minute. Last time I spoke to you guys about this, Texas was around 290 cases. We're now over 400. We've had dozens of people hospitalized. We've had deaths. It's spreading across multiple countries, and this is flying underneath the radar. I'm concerned about two things. The Department of Health and Human Services, this Centers for Disease Control, are decreasing staff in key areas that could help with these type of, or can we call this an outbreak yet? I guess it is an outbreak. And they're more focused on things which are onset within Americans. Diabetes, people that develop gout because of poor eating, people that develop heart disease. They're more focused on that type of stuff because you are more likely to die from those onset diseases than you are from an outbreak. So I can understand why they're shifting that focus. But here and now, while we're in the middle of the worst measles outbreak in years, it does concern me that I live in the state that has the highest outbreak, and it's spreading to more and more counties. So I've already checked all my kids. Everybody's up on their shots. My youngest two have not had their second shots yet. The other 3 kids have had all their shots. Me and Mrs. X are good to go. That's a consideration you have to make. My med kits are good to go in regards to being able to identify whether or not we have a high temperature, being able to determine whether or not we have rashes all over the body, if we have redness in the eyes, and whether we can act on that or not. There's not yet an at-home measles test kit, not that I've seen. So I think that you should still be doing preventative care as well. I'm telling you what I've done for my family. We've stocked up on N95 masks out the wazoo because measles can last for hours in a room once an infected person has left. And there can be asymptomatic people as well that can leave a room and leave an area susceptible to spread the disease. For you, if you live in one of those states that has a lower risk, maybe this part of me talking is less concern to you. If you're in North Dakota, if you're in Washington State, if you're in Idaho, you're like, X, I give 0 Fs about measles right now. I understand that. But if you're in a more condensed population center, if you're in a state that has literally been reported to have cases, you might want to make sure that you stock up on your kits. East Coast, we have New Jersey, New York, places that are more condensed like the DC area, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Hopefully this warmer weather that we're about to get helps keeping the virus itself from spreading. Maybe it can't survive as good. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how that stuff works. I'm just telling you how I do my type of prep. Lowest on the totem pole for me right now is without rule of law. This is something that I've kind of brushed on in a video a few days ago, but without rule of law is a scenario for which an area, whether it's your city, your municipality, or an entire country, no longer has rule of law which governs over certain aspects of that society. One thing, if you don't have rule of law, then you can have a rise in vigilantes. You can have a rise in gangs. You saw what's going on with Trinidad de Agra, whatever that gang is from Venezuela. And the Trump administration is being aggressive about deporting folks. Hopefully, they're only deporting gangsters. Okay, I would prefer that they're convicted gangsters. But at the end of the day, because of how aggressive my administration is being right now, and I say my because he's all our president, I'm okay with without rule of law for the rise of vigilantes. I don't see that as a big threat. But ruling class imbalances is something that I am thinking about more and more. When I see people that work for the government that are able to do one thing, like texting, hey, big head, in a signal chat, whereas I see a low level employee that may work for the Department of Health and Human Services who accidentally adds a reporter to an email chain who's about to get her ass fired, there's an imbalance in social classes. And that is a symptom of without rule of law because one party doesn't have the rule of law above them. They don't have to worry about getting in trouble, and another party does. That's something that you have to think about is just ensuring that, hey, listen, there's not a lot you can directly do to stop or control WROL. What you can do is ensuring that you're on top of your P's and Q's because you know that we are regular minions and we can get in trouble for jaywalking while other folks can not. Other things that have to do that, such as economic imbalances, such as having to go to the barter system. I have prepped for that type of stuff. You don't need to do that type of stuff yet. That's a symptom of without rule of law. Literally behind me is one of my bartering kits, just in case shit were to hit the fan and the dollar no longer works because of tariffs or because of, our dollar is insanely overpriced versus other countries' currencies. I'm ready to trade to get stuff that I need. But that's just me. You're not at that point yet, but that is something that I kind of want to keep on your radar. Last but not least is the overall immigration issue as a whole. Okay, so the administration is revoking protective statuses of different classes of people around the country. Some judges are blocking it. In my opinion, ultimately, the executive branch controls immigration. So although these blocks have been put in place, they're going to be lifted. And so there are going to be a lot of people who don't self-deport because the Trump administration is telling them to self-deport, who are instantly going to be in criminal status. When there is an increased number of people in criminal status, that doesn't make them criminals. If you got a mom who overstayed her visa and now she's no longer has protective status and she's 67 years old, I mean, technically, she is no longer under protective status. I'm not very concerned about her kicking my front door in and holding the entire family at gunpoint. But there's other people that get desperate who no longer allowed to work in America with a proper work visa, who have other people to take care of because they married an American citizen. They have American kids. They become more desperate. If you saw my video on the without rule of law ammo that you should keep stockpiled, that has to do with a scenario such as this. If you're surrounded by folks who have little to lose, they're more likely to come near you or your castle. So I would just take my advice. If it comes to rim fire, center fire, whether it's pistol or rifle, those ratios that I gave you in that video, 1,000 and 100, are a minimum. Maybe you want to do more than that. And of course, your shotties, 550, are my recommendations as well. Those are the things I'm thinking about nowadays, early April 2025, tax season upon us. I know we're busy doing other stuff, getting ready for the summer season, but don't forget about stuff that can make your life a living hell. First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you a part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.